Welcome to our Legislative District 12 Candidate Forum, co-sponsored by the Chandler Education Association and the Valley Interfaith Project. My name is Josh Martin. I am the president of the Chandler Education Association and a VIP leader. During this non-partisan event, we ask that candidates adhere to time limits and act with decorum. We also ask the audience to hold all applause and cheering, even as our distinguished guests are welcomed. All candidates from both parties, including our incumbents, were invited to participate. Today, we are fortunate to have, and if you'll wave when I say your name, Elizabeth Brown, Joe Bizaccia, Jimmy Lindblom, Lindsay Robinson, DJ Rothens, and Blake Saka. I'd like to introduce to you Josh Buckley. He is the president of the Mesa Education Association. He resides here in Gilbert in the LD12. He is the chair of the Invest in Ed committee. And Josh is going to provide us with a little state of the state of Arizona.
All right. Can I use the podium? I just feel weird if I stand in front of you.
All right, guys. So, like Josh said, my name is Josh Buckley, and I am the president of the Mesa Education Association. I live here in LD12. I live in the Higley School District. My wife is an educator. I'm entering my 13th year as a teacher. I teach at Red Mountain High School in Mesa. Both my kids are in public schools in Mesa Public Schools. But I know how important education voting is, and so I wanted to, they asked me to speak a little bit, so I wanted to talk to you about the importance of education when it comes to voting here and to what's going on here in Arizona. So where we are right now, even with what happened this year with the budget, and I would tell you this is a large amount of money went into the education budget for the first time in a long time, but we are still about $700 million shy of where we were at in 2008. So about $700 million shy of where we were at in 2008. To give you an understanding of what those dollars mean, we don't fund full-day kindergarten in Arizona. So although your school, whether it's Chandler or Gilbert or Higley, might provide full-day kindergarten for students, it is not paid for by state funding. The district has to take money from other places in order to fund full-day kindergarten. The other issue, we're about $237 million shy of where we used to be when it came to building maintenance. And so just upkeep on our schools. If you are in Chandler or Gilbert, you have the sort of luxury of having a lot of new schools, but some of your schools that are on the older side, they do need upkeep. But the district ed is trying to scramble for those dollars because they don't have them. We're also about $270 million shy of where we used to be for district additional assistance. District additional assistance is used for, again, maintenance and upkeep on buildings, buying textbooks, taking care of buses and all sorts of stuff. And so you'll see that your district goes out for bonds and overrides to help pay for those things, because over the last 10 years or more, those fundings, that funding has been cut, but has not been replaced since since the recession has ended. So what does that mean for voters who care about education in Arizona? And that's what I'm here to speak about. And I know that's not all the questions today, but as a teacher and as someone who's passionate about education and my community, there are a lot of things you need to know. Education is at the forefront of what's going on in Arizona. You've heard about it, you've seen it on the news, it's all over the place. And so there are a lot of ways for you to be tuned in, whether you're an educator or a parent or a community member who thinks that schools are important to what we do as a society, what we do as a community. There's a lot of ways that you can pay attention. You have a campaign called Prop 305. There's a proposition on the ballot called 305 that deals with the expansion of vouchers, which would take money from the general fund and allow it to be used on private school education. So not public schools, but private school education. So pay attention to what's going on with that. Like Josh said, I am the chair of Invest in Ed, which is a ballot initiative that will generate $690 million for public education per year, and that would get us close to that 2008 funding level if that were passed. You can also pay attention to who the pro-public education candidates are. So a forum like this is a great thing. So whether they're Democrats or Republicans or independents, you want to pay attention to where they're at on education. What do they think? What is the school you want? Just imagine for 1 second the school that you want your students to go to, the school you want your kids to go to, or that you want the kids down the road who live in the house next to you to go to. What does that school look like? Are the candidates here, or the candidates you see out there, are they going to help you get that school? Are they going to help our communities get the schools that our students deserve? You might have board members that are up for election, school board members. There are state legislators. There's a superintendent of public instruction, a governor's race. And so I would ask you as an educator, as someone who's passionate about education in the state, to pay attention to where candidates sit on education issues. Pay attention to where they're at when it comes to school funding, when it comes to supporting all Arizona students, whether they're all the way in Yuma, or they're here in the valley, or they're up north, wherever they're at, that all students in Arizona get a shot at the best quality education possible. And so after you leave here today, after you hear this, find out how you can help. If you think one of these candidates is going to has your views in mind, support that candidate. Canvass for them, knock on some doors, make some phone calls, make a donation, help them get elected so that you get the Arizona that you want and that you think the future of Arizona deserves. So that's all I got, guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that overview. We're next going to hear from two teachers. Katie Nash, she's a Chandler liaison for Arizona Educators United. She's also a member of the CEA, and she teaches at Chandler High School. We'll also meet Rebecca. Rebecca spearheaded the Red for Ed movement. She lives here in Gilbert and works in the Alhambra School District. Katie and Rebecca?
All right, hello everyone. My name is Rebecca Gorelli. I am one of the lead organizers of Arizona Educators United and also the Red for Ed movement. So I'm going to talk to you for about 1 minute about why I'm here. Basically, I joined you today because I'm a Gilbert resident. I live here with my husband and my 3 kids who are under the age of 4. That means I have kids that are going to go to public school in 1 year. So that is at the top of my priority of everything I do as a mom and as an educator. I've been teaching for 14 years, and I recently moved here from Chicago, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have funding problems there either. I was part of the 2012 strike in Chicago there, so I have been through this before, and it's the same thing with funding. So my husband and I started looking at Arizona. We wanted to move here for about 5 years. We started saving up money, and 2 years ago I started researching teaching positions to get ahead of the game. And what I realized is that I didn't think I was going to be able to move here because I do have 3 kids in daycare, and that comes with a very high cost. And if I am not given a livable wage as a teacher, I can't move here. So I interviewed at about 15 different districts, including Gilbert, Chandler, Tempe, Mesa, you name it. I interviewed. I was immediately offered the job on the spot, which is clearly evidence that there is a shortage of teachers. If they are offering me a job on the spot via Skype, that says something. So I started digging and digging and digging, and I kept learning about the statistics and learning about how bad it was out here. And every salary I was offered was about $35,000 less than I was making in Chicago. And while I understand cost of living is a difference, it's not that huge. It really isn't. So, as somebody who obviously cares about education, and I'm just going to say as a Gilbert resident and a mom and an educator, I'm going to urge you guys as the candidates to represent our district to put education as your priority. Our kids and our colleagues deserve better than what's happening right now. So thank you.
My name is Katie Nash, and I live in Queen Creek, so I'm also in LD12. And this is my 13th year of teaching, my 5th year in Arizona. And unlike Rebecca, I didn't do my research. We moved here because of my husband's job, and I thought it's going to be amazing. It's going to be so much sunshine. Anywhere has to be better than the cold winters in New York. But I was rudely awakened. So in New York, I would complain that my smart board wasn't aligned correctly. If you don't know what a smart board is, it's like right on the board, and it, like, the kids can come up and interact with that. I have just a regular old whiteboard at Chandler. Nothing against Chandler because it's an amazing district, but we have a lack of technology. In New York, I would complain when there were 26 girls in my class. I taught in an all-girls Catholic school, so I would complain like, oh my gosh, that's against OSHA regulation to have 26 kids. I have 35 now, and that's pretty regular. We also, every year, so we're going through it right now, have to fight to get another teacher in our school to help offload our class size. So right now I'm at 35. It'll grow because enrollment's going up. And then someone will inevitably have to go on 6 because even in Chandler we face a teacher shortage. I was complaining about my individual laptop and how it wouldn't work. Today I couldn't even log into the computer. We were having internet issues. And the phone is tied to the internet, so I couldn't call the help desk. It's amazing to me the lack of resources and what we have put up with in Arizona for so long. My daughters could have had free music classes, free art classes, all of which I pay for now. That's all part of a New York State curriculum. PE is offered more regularly. Music instrument lessons are offered regularly. Choir. All that stuff is fully funded, and then they came here, and now I have to pay for all that stuff with a lower salary in order to afford to live in Arizona. So again, like Rebecca, I'm asking you guys to fight for education. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for sharing, for setting the stage for this forum. I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Robin Hollis. She's the deacon at St. James Episcopal Church. She's an active Valley Interfaith Project leader. Deacon Robin will serve as our moderator.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, candidates. Our 6 candidates today received 12 questions in advance, and we're told that they will have 30 seconds to answer each of the first 7 questions. For the final 5 questions, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer those. The candidate responses can be tracked on your handout. I believe you received one. If someone's missing one, I think we have some folks that can help you. Anyone missing a handout? Oh, that's great. Good job, registration. We ask at this point in time, please, that there be no clapping, no cheering the members before, during, or after any of their responses. Susan Skousen is our Vice President of CEA Executive Board, and she is our timer, and she's already gone over the rules with the candidates so they know what to look for. She will be holding up a red card when the candidates have 15 seconds remaining in the first 7 questions, and when she puts it down, they are to stop. Now, we don't have Oscar music, but we're going to do the best we can to make that happen. And then when they have the 1.5 minute question, Susan will hold up a yellow card at 1 minute, and a red card when you have 30 seconds remaining, and then the red card will go down when their time is up. We respectfully request adherence to these time limits, and we've already gone over those rules with them. So candidates will ask that you begin your answer after I have called upon you. And again, as a reminder, we do ask everyone to please hold your applause and cheering. We will get an opportunity to thank all of the candidates at the end of this part of the session, and we really thank you for honoring that request. So, here we go. Question number 1. When was the last time you visited a public school classroom in Arizona? And we're going to start with Joe Bizachia.
Thank you, Deacon. That's a great question. It was actually, the answer to that is today, because I am a public school teacher here in Arizona. I work at Cooley Middle School in Higley Unified. I live here in Gilbert, and this is my 2nd year in the district, and most of my days I spend in the classroom, so very soon, very recent.
Thank you. Next we'll have Elizabeth Brown.
Thank you. The last time I visited a classroom was 2 years ago when I went to my granddaughter's preparation for her choir concert. But this year I do plan to get prepared for the election to visit public schools. And when my children were in elementary school, I did help regularly in their class.
Thank you. Jimmy Lou?
All right. Well, I have 5 children and 4 are in school, so I spend quite a bit of time in the classroom, but more particularly this year as our 4th child, which really had a struggle with learning reading and his letters. We spent a lot of time with the teacher. We were really concerned, and it was the first time we experienced that. And this teacher did an amazing job helping us to get him up to speed, and it was really a godsend. It was great. So that was my experience this year. Lots of time in the classroom.
Thank you. Lindsay Robinson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here and the organizers for putting this important event together. To answer your question, a couple of weeks prior to the last day of school for my son's 5th grade presentation on Dr. Martin Luther King, and I'll be back this Thursday for Meet the Teacher Night. Thank you.
Thank you. DJ Ruffins.
In 2017, I was invited to speak to 3 different classes about Union heritage in the fall semester. Thank you.
Thank you. Blake Suck.
Thank you. During my campaign, I visited many district and charter schools, classrooms here in Gilbert. Most recently, I visited Val Vista Academy in the south of Gilbert, and I believe it is critical that anyone who wants to run for the state legislature spends time in and is very familiar with the depth and breadth of the classrooms and schools that we have here in Gilbert and Queen Creek.
Thank you, sir. Question number 2. About a month into the 2017-2018 school year, there were more than 1,300 unfilled teacher positions across the state. And last year alone, Arizona schools hired over 1,000 teachers who were certified to teach under a certificate that did not require any formal education training. Should teachers be highly qualified, yes or no, and why? And this time we will start with Elizabeth Brown.
No, to be a teacher, you need to take education classes. When a person does not take education classes to be a teacher, it discredits the profession and it doesn't serve the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy Lindblom.
So teachers need to be highly qualified and trained. I think back of my high school experience with a highly qualified and trained teacher, Mr. Daly. He's still with the Gilbert Public School District. He shaped my early years and actually really gave me the confidence to grow and to be brave and go out on my own. And so we need them in the classroom, and we need them effective in the classroom as well. That's very important. Training and effectiveness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay Robinson.
Thank you. Allowing out-of-field teachers as the norm to educate our children plays into the misconception that anyone can teach if they know a particular subject or that we don't necessarily first have to learn about curriculum, classroom management, or instruction. Ultimately, it is a disrespect to the field of education and says that our children are not a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. DJ Rosen.
We need qualified teachers in the classroom. All teachers need to have certified education training.
Thank you. Blake Saka.
Yes, we want excellent, highly qualified teachers in each and every one of our classrooms. And in order to hire and retain excellent teachers, we have to pay a competitive wage. And we also need to look at reducing classroom restrictions and allowing teachers to teach.
Thank you.
Robin,
And
can we, for our scorecards out here, we're going to have some yes and no's. Do you mind if we just, so we can get our scorecards with yeses and no's from each of the candidates, go through real quick with that? A couple of them didn't quite say yes or no, so I just want
okay, Joe needs
Oh,
to
I'm
answer,
sorry.
and then I'll have them do it. I thought I heard yes and no's, but that's my ears. Joe Bizasiak.
Yes, as a model and as a standard, teachers should be highly qualified in Arizona, and that is the standard that we should be attracting teachers with, because we can't afford to have our students slipping through cracks. Excuse me.
Okay, so we'll start with Elizabeth, if you would say yes or no, and we'll just go right down the same order in which you answered the question.
Yes, they need to be highly qualified.
Yes.
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 Thank you. And I had warned them too, sorry I didn't catch that. Question number 3. In this past legislative session, Proposition 301, a voter sales tax initiative, was extended for 20 years. Do you support this extension? Yes or no, and why? And this time, for this question, we will start with Jimmy Lindbergh.
Okay, I absolutely supported that extension and would have voted for it if I was there. My opponent did not, and he was one of the few that didn't, and I found it extremely irresponsible considering he didn't have any solutions as far as a fiscal cliff. What do we tell the superintendents? Where they're going to come up with their $5,500 or around that for the teachers. We need leaders that can govern, not just say no. So.
Okay, reminder that we ask you to honor, even if they're not here.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Lindsay Robinson.
Yes. Arizona currently ranks last in the nation for teacher pay. To reach the national median would require an annual investment of roughly $800 million to $1 billion annually. Prop 301, which increased the sales tax from 5% to 5.6%, advances the cause and has generated $600 million annually, with $500 million going to education. Money public education desperately needs.
DJ Rothan.
Yes, restoring public education funding is my #1 priority.
Thank you. Blake Sanka.
Yes, I did support the Proposition 301 extension, and my opponents in the Republican primary did not. In 2017, Proposition 301 provided nearly $5,500 in salary for each and every one of our teachers across the state of Arizona. Over its 20-year life, the Proposition 301 will provide more than $20 billion to Arizona education, with 84% going to K-12 education.
Thank you. Joe Bisaccia.
Yes, so I supported the extension of Prop 301, and I would have voted to extend it if I were in the State House. However, I think as a model, I don't think it's really good policy long-term to be so heavily dependent on sales tax in the state to fund education, and I think we need to long-term look at creating a more sustainable revenue source than sales tax as a model.
And Elizabeth Brown.
Yes, I do support Proposition 301. We need to have the money to implement what Proposition 301 was meant to do, and that was to reduce class sizes 23 to 1. This was a ballot initiative passed by the voters, and I think that it was the responsible thing to do for our governor and legislature to extend the funding.
Thank you. We will now move on to question number 4. Charter schools receive public school funding, but are not currently being held to the same standards and rules as the rest of our public schools. Do you support holding them to the same standards and rules as public schools, including but not limited to greater transparency and accountability of their spending, record keeping, and school board meetings? And again, this is a yes or no, and why? And this time, for the order, we'll start with Lindsay Robinson.
Yes. Unlike a representative that shall remain nameless, who believes that once money reaches a charter school.
Okay, let's stop, in all fairness to you.
Okay.
I think we just took off here.
We are in space. We are in space.
We are in space, that's true. Space rocket, I forgot about that. Okay.
Thank you. So unlike a representative who shall remain nameless, who believes that once money reaches a charter school owner's hands, the money is convertible and can't be tracked, I believe that since it's public money, we should have every right to know exactly how that money is spent. I would support legislation that requires charter schools to post their entire budget on their website for transparency to protect our communities.
And is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
And I've been asked if we all can speak up and project louder, so I guess that's we all have to sit up, right? Use that diaphragm. Okay, DJ Rothan.
Yes, charter schools need to be held to the same standard of rules for the public school. All tax dollars spent should be transparent.
Thank you. Blake Saka.
Yes, I do support additional fiscal accountability for charter schools. We should all be able to easily determine how our public tax dollars are being spent on education.
Thank you. Joe Bisaccia.
Yes, there needs to be comprehensive reform to the entire charter school system here we have in the state. That includes strict anti-conflict of interest legislation that's vigorously enforced, meaning no legislators can vote on or co-sponsor any legislation if they have a vested financial interest in said charter schools. That means that all jobs need to be given to the lowest bid as per traditional public schools in the state, and I do believe that their budgets should be posted on the Arizona Department of Education's website, just like traditional public schools are as well.
Thank you. And thank you for talking over the space.
No problem.
Elizabeth Brown.
Yes, charter schools receive public money. Therefore, charter schools need to be held to the same accountability as public schools. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And as you know, in the legislature, they passed the initiative the amendment that charter schools do not have to put their budget once they get the money. This is unacceptable, and that is why I am running to hold charter schools accountable.
Thank you. And Jimmy Lindblom.
All right. I really view this as a fiscal responsibility principle, and I believe, so yes, and accountability for every taxpayer dollar spent is kind of the motto as I walk around and talk to people. Taxpayers want to know what's being done with their money when it's being used for a public purpose. And some say that it's not the taxpayer's business that transmutes. I disagree with that, and I think that the standards should be the same for public schools when it comes to transparency. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to question number 5. In 2017, the legislature passed SB 1431, which made all K through 12 students eligible to receive empowerment scholarship vouchers. Last summer, Save Our Schools collected enough signatures to get Proposition 305 on the ballot to oppose voucher expansion. In November, voters will have an opportunity to vote on Proposition 305. A yes vote would allow the expansion. A no vote would not allow the expansion. How will you vote on Proposition 305? Will it be a yes or a no, and why? And this time we will start with DJ Robin.
No. That's how I will vote. Save Our Schools movement brought Proposition 305 to the November ballot, giving us the opportunity to vote no on Proposition 305, stopping the expansion of the voucher system.
Thank you. Blake Sacker.
I'm opposed to the expansion of vouchers and will vote no on Proposition 305. I want to focus the time and energy of our legislators on action which will have the biggest impact on improving the quality of education for the most students across Arizona.
Thank you, sir. Joe Bizaccia.
I adamantly oppose Proposition 305. I am urging all of my supporters to vote against Proposition 305, and the reason being is that I believe it is socialism for the super elite.
Elizabeth Brown.
I also will vote no on Proposition 305. To me, it is no secret that the end game is to decimate the public school system. I will not support this proposition.
Jimmy Lindblom.
All right. I will support it. I was okay with the expansion as it was ultimately decided and passed. They modified it to reduce the overall general fund. They protected it, and I just believe that. Let's see. Wait a second here.
Sounds like Mario.
Sounds like my kids' games.
Okay, we'll give you an
My
extra
pen.
15 seconds here.
Thank you. You know, I really believe that parents have the ability to choose the school that works, and I don't believe that the different private charters and publics have they have to be mutually exclusive. We need to support candidates that will adequately fund our public schools, which I intend to do, and I was okay with the ESA expansion as it was presented.
And finally, Lindsay Robinson.
I will vote no. Currently, the voucher program provides roughly $5,000 to parents to support their child's education. However, the average cost of an education is roughly $17,000 a year, which leaves the kids which it was intended to benefit unable to take advantage of the program. Expanding the program would likely bankrupt the financially struggling public education system, and the voucher expansion program, in my view, is a cop-out to avoid fixing our education system funding problem.
Thank you. Okay, again, I would like to just remind those here present that we need your poker faces, so no reactions, even if you would like to react one way or the other. Just a quick reminder. Okay, question number 6. This spring, the governor promised teachers a 20% salary increase, 10% this school year, 5% in 2019, and 5% in 2020. Will you support the governor's 20 by 2020 plan? Yes or no, and why? And this time we will start with Blake Saka.
Yes, I do support the governor's plan. Providing money for a 20% salary increase and getting $500 million of new money into education is a good idea. Follow through on this plan is critical. And to ensure that happens, we need to ensure we elect legislators who support sustainable funding for education.
Thank you. Joe Bisaccia.
So I did not support this plan. I'm very happy to see teachers get a temporary raise. There's certainly no guarantee that the next 2 years we're going to see that raise. The governor is up for re-election, so it's pretty curious that he came around right in the middle of his re-election campaign. But nonetheless, we need to come up with real sustainable funding here at the state. It's not enough to just siphon some money out of the Department of Environmental Quality and siphon some more money out of school resource officer budget. That's not enough. It's not going to get the job done long term. We still have over $700 million that's missing out of the system just to get us back to where we were pre-recession levels.
Thank you. Elizabeth Brown.
Yes, however, the reason this happened is because the governor saw that there was something going on and people didn't like what was going on. So he put this in plan, but it lacks specifics. The teachers called for a 20% pay raise. They wanted their annual raises to go up to meet the national average. And they want their class sizes decreased. This does not address any of these issues, so we must make more plans.
Thank you. Jimmy Lindblom.
All right, I supported the plan. If elected, I'll work to make sure that it actually is fulfilled and hopefully to get teachers more. So, I did.
Thank you. Lindsay Robinson.
Given that's what we have to work with, I support something rather than nothing. The teacher pay raise plan passed by the governor is a step in the right direction. However, the plan does not go far enough. The plan does not have a permanent sustainable funding source. According to education advocates, public school operational funding would remain below $950 million, which is below the 2008 levels, leaving public education funding more than an entire decade behind.
Thank you. We now move on to DJ Rovens.
Yes, I support this, if in fact it follows through. In January, our governor proposed a 0.4% raise for the teachers. The legislature, in the kindness of their heart, raised that up to 1%. It wasn't until 20 or 70,000 plus red shirts marched on the Capitol that somehow another 20% was found. I support restoring public education funding to where it would be at the 20%, and it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Okay, question number 7, and we'll be back at the beginning of the rotation here. Here's the question. And a reminder to just speak out and project so that we can hear you. This month, 270,000 signatures were submitted to get the Invest in Education initiative on the November ballot to raise $690 million for education by raising taxes on individual incomes over $250,000 or a couple's income over $500,000 by 3.46% and by 4.46% on individual incomes over $500,000 and a couple's income $1 million or more. I know that's a lot of numbers, right? So here's the question. How will you vote on Invest in Ed? Yes or no, and why? And we'll start with Joe Bisaccia.
I am supporting the Invest in Education Act. I am happy to have circulated petitions and collected over 100 signatures for this ballot initiative. I'm urging all my supporters to vote in favor of it as well. However, this is a temporary solution, and long-term we need to look at comprehensive tax reform here at the state, because we can't afford to just keep putting some more band-aids on a long-term problem. We need to really look at how we allocate tax revenue throughout the entire system, whether it be corporate sales tax, corporate tax, individual tax. The whole system needs to be reformed.
Thank you. Elizabeth Brown.
Yes, I will vote invest in ed. It is no secret that Arizona tax policies for the past few decades have disproportionately favored the wealthiest and the large corporations. According to studies I have seen, what this does is level the playing field. Also, we know that the money will go to education.
Thank you. Jimmy Lindblom.
All right. I won't support invest in ed as it's written, although it sounds counter to what I believe. I believe we do need to invest in ed. I just think there's alternate ways to invest in our education program that will give us long-term sustainable growth. I'm concerned about taxing brackets that we are creating an environment of an extremely high tax bracket where we run off a lot of those that provide jobs, and this will affect small businesses. And so I believe there's other ways to fund education, and I intend to find them.
Thank you. Lindsay Robinson.
Yes. Though Arizona's Constitution requires a 2/3 majority vote to approve bills that provide a net increase in state revenues, I support the Invest in Ed initiative. I carried petitions for the initiative, and I plan to vote yes. I think that the legislature has starved public education to the point where such an initiative is necessary. And as stated earlier, the governor's plan does not fully fund education, and I see the initiative as a smart solution by our teachers to protect our children.
Thank you. DJ Rojas.
Yes, restoring public education funding is my #1 priority. Until the legislature comes up with a dedicated funding source, I'm in favor of this initiative.
Thank you. Blake Saka.
I'm angry at our state legislators. I'm angry because I have to choose between voting no on critical education funding and voting yes on a flawed initiative that lacks broad-based support amongst business, education, and community leaders. I'm running because I'm tired of giving people lose-lose choices, and I want to go down to the legislature and focus on sustainable education for our future.
Is the answer yes or no?
Reluctantly, I will vote no.
Thank you. Okay, candidates, as we now move on to question number 8, this is a reminder that your time limit is extended to 1.5 minutes. So here's question number 8. Our current education funding is almost $700 million less than it was in 2008, and Arizona currently ranks 48th in the nation in per pupil spending. Aside from Invest in Ed, how can our state provide sustained funding to ensure a quality public education for all Arizona students? And this time we will start with Elizabeth Brown.
Being ranked 48th in the country, to me, is a travesty and an embarrassment. In Arizona, 75% of the businesses only pay $50 a year in taxes. I think it is un-American that large corporations do not want to invest and contribute to our public schools. We must hold these large companies accountable. We must review the tax codes and close the loopholes.
Thank you. Jimmy Lindblom.
All right. Now that I have more time, I'll thank all of you for being here. But this is a really great question, and finding a long-term, sustainable, predictable funding source is critical. Part of that, and my reluctance in Invest for Ed, is that I believe when we create an environment in the state that is a low tax base, low regulatory environment, we bring and build our economy. Our economy drives us. And part of also being able to drive the economy is having a strong education system where people want to come here. I'm tired of hearing companies say they don't want to come to Arizona because they don't want their kids to go to school here. And it's critical that we raise the bar, improve our education system. It's one of my drivers of economy. and prepare the workforce. Work on CTE programs, work on the JTEDs, other alternative methods that have really worked to get people out of the classroom, into jobs, vibrant economy, less crime. You get the picture. So we've got to improve our schools. So.
Thank you. Lindsay Robinson.
Education funding comes from property taxes, sales taxes, personal corporate taxes. Before the public can be burdened even further with increased taxes, the state legislature must review the tax codes. There are several tax benefits that corporations receive which benefit the public, but there are many more that do not. And for those that do not benefit the public, the legislature needs to revisit those tax incentives as a revenue source for education. According to the Center for Economic Progress, tax cuts enacted over the past decade are not benefiting most Arizonans. This year's corporate income tax collections are projected to be the lowest since 1993. Tax credits cost the state budget $618 million in 2017, and there are too many sales tax loopholes. 74% of Arizona corporations are able to reduce their income tax liability to $50 or less, and our state legislator cannot even provide evidence on whether or not Arizona is getting any benefits in return for all the tax cuts. For example, tax cuts include sales tax, fine arts that is shipped out of state, private jets, service contracts, warranties, horse vitamins, and 4-inch diameter pipes. With a possible $680 million in revenue, closing tax loopholes will provide public education a sustainable funding source.
Thank you. DJ Rothen.
Until the public education funding is better than it was in 2008, I'm in favor of looking at closing some of the tax loopholes. Also, researching increasing the tax on alcohol and tobacco products.
Thank you. Blake Saka.
We do need significant additional funding for Arizona. And I have worked with many of you in this room to pass bonds and overrides and support previous education funding initiatives, and will continue to do that. In addition, as a state legislator, I will focus on 3 specific actions. First, to reduce the restrictions on funding so that the money given to school districts can be used more effectively and efficiently to meet their needs. Second, simplify and standardize the funding formula. I have talked to many district and charter school leaders throughout this campaign, and the single thing I can tell you that they all tell me is they get more money than I do. Everyone that I talk to. And that's not good for education in Arizona, and we need to simplify and standardize the formula. And third, I support establishing new streams of revenue to increase the funding for public education in Arizona.
Thank you. Joe Bisaccia.
Thank you. As I said with the last question, we need to look at comprehensive tax reform here at the entire state. I don't know how many people in the audience know this, but embedded in our state tax code, you can actually write off the gasoline if you own a private jet. I don't think anybody in the audience here thinks that that's a very good idea, how that makes any sense at all. So these are just, I mean, our state tax code is littered with all sorts of loopholes right here. Our state budget is roughly about $9 billion. We give away $13.4 billion in corporate sales tax loopholes alone. If you go to a hardware store to buy a 2-inch pipe, there's a sales tax on that. If you go to buy a 4-inch pipe, there's a sales tax on that. But if you go to buy a 3-inch pipe, there's no sales tax on that because Southwest Gas uses that pipe when they're laying pipes down in the state. We're giving away $13.4 billion a year in this. It's being starved from our education funding budget and a bunch of other services that we need to provide here at the state level. So what I would like us to do is comprehensive tax reform and long-term actually move us away from a state income-based tax system to a corporate-based tax system as well. That's what the state of Florida does. They have no state income tax over there, and they're basically at full employment as well. And I don't see any large corporations that are fleeing the state of Florida. They seem to be doing quite fine over there. We've heard time and time again from local chambers of commerce, business leaders, talk about the need to increase funding for public education. When the rubber meets the road, they don't actually want to pay for it themselves. They think that the common man should be paying for it, and I don't think that's right.
Thank you. We're moving on to question number 9 now on your scorecards. And that is, how do you weigh public safety against the Second Amendment? And this time we will start with Jimmy Lindblom.
Yeah, it's critical that our kids are safe when they go to school. And as I really support the Second Amendment and own many guns, but I believe that it's important that we have restrictions that keep guns out of the hands of criminals and the mentally ill, and that we also provide ways to help those that are criminals and mentally ill. On the criminal side, with criminal justice reform, especially with the drug issues that we have in our state, we've got to do a lot in reforming our criminal justice system. And that alone, by keeping people out of prison, by getting them the help so that they don't return back to prison, 50% are returning back to prison within 8 months that have drug issues. Talk about funding, finding funding to fund schools. There's part of the solution. But when we look at schools and security, reconciling it, really I believe a big part of it is designing schools where they're safe and coming up with ways that we can reasonably keep the guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them. So.
Thank you. Lindsay Robinson.
Thank you. I support the Second Amendment. However, protecting our communities is of the utmost importance. 7 children and teens die from gun violence in the U.S. every day. According to the Department of Justice, background checks have blocked 3 million people from prohibited firearms, which they would have otherwise had access to. Arizona ranks 16th in the nation in firearm deaths. When Congress passed legislation to raise the minimum age to purchase handguns to 21 in 1968, it did so because handguns at the time were used in the majority of firearm-related crimes. Rifles were used mostly for hunting, and assault weapons like AR-15s were not widely available to the public. Our world has changed since then. The advent of school shootings had made it necessary to raise the minimum age of all gun ownership to 21. According to psychologists, the type of shootings we see are characteristic of impulsive, immature, complete disregard of risk, which is characteristic of a younger brain. They state that there is evidence to support that the part of the brain responsible for inhibiting socially unacceptable actions does not complete developing until early 20s. Thus, science supports raising the minimum age to purchase firearms to at least 21 years old. I will support banning bump stops, requiring universal background checks, and as necessary steps to protect our communities from gun violence.
Thank you. PJ Broken.
We've been avoiding a mental health issue in our society for a long time. We need to address this issue for the safety of all of us, and I support the Second Amendment.
Lake Saka.
I grew up learning to handle guns safely at YMCA camp, and I support the Second Amendment. I believe the most effective way to reduce gun violence is to reduce domestic violence and to support adequate and excellent mental health care. Specific to school safety, I support additional passive safety measures and police officers in our schools. During the last legislative session, the governor proposed gun safety legislation. I didn't agree with everything in the proposal, but our legislature failed utterly by not even taking up the proposal and spending time and effort working to identify solutions to this complex problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Bisaccia.
Thank you. I, for one, am sick and tired of politicians offering thoughts and prayers every time there's a mass shooting. I'm really tired of listening to politicians talk about how much they revere the Second Amendment, but they don't know if there's anything they can do to prevent these shootings. You know what? Kids are being slaughtered. Teachers are being mowed down. I mean, this isn't a game. People's lives are at stake. And quite frankly, I think it's really shameful that we've got nothing done at this country for far too long. And there's a lot of things we can do at the state level. A lot of things. We can reduce the size of clips and magazines. We can make it illegal for armor-piercing bullets to be sold. Those are a few of the things. We can ban bump stocks. We've done none of these things. We can raise the age of buying a weapon to 21 years old. Those are a few of the things. At the federal level, we should, obviously I don't have much say over that, but we should look at taking assault weapons and reclassifying them as a Title II firearm, just like they did with Thompson's machine guns. There is an established constitutional law that is legal to do that, and the Supreme Court has said that does not violate the Second Amendment. So we really need to take a long, hard look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what kind of country do we want to be? Are we going to be the country that we continuously watch our young people and our educators and people that are going to the mall and going to the movies just shot and killed? Is that the kind of country you want to live in? I don't.
Thank you. And Elizabeth Brown.
When our forefathers wrote the Second Amendment, there was one gun, and it was a musket. And there was enough powder for one shot. I cannot fathom that our forefathers would be allowing what is going on right now. Our schools are not safe. Places are not safe anymore. My daughter had a conversation with me about my granddaughter, saying, "Mom, if things continue the way they are, I don't want to send my daughter to school. I want to homeschool her." That is a travesty. We have to start doing something. People say, well, this won't work, this won't work. We have to start somewhere. Banning bum stocks, universal background checks, having more school counselors for these troubled children that have nowhere to go. They need to have voice and they need to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to question number 10 now. How do you propose Arizona attract corporations? And we'll start with Lindsay Robinson.
Thank you. A well-educated force attracts companies. When we make education a priority, then all our students, regardless of socioeconomic background, will have the same opportunities. Investing in our infrastructure benefits everyone. Expanding public transportation will help low-income families secure and keep jobs while encouraging commuters to protect the environment by commuting. Trains that run from Tucson to Phoenix will facilitate greater pool of applicants for jobs and provide increased job opportunities for all. Corporations realizing that they have access to a greater pool of applicants may consider locating to parts of the valley they may have never considered before. Thank you.
Thank you. DJ Rothen.
Corporations are looking for a well-educated workforce, and restoring public education funding will provide that workforce.
Thank you. Blake Saka.
Education, education, and education. During my campaign, I've spoken with hundreds of business and economic leaders, and they all tell me we have the low tax and the low regulatory environment to attract education, but our gap is education. We don't have a trained workforce, employee development, and a robust K through 16 education system. And those are the tools that we need to attract and retain corporations. I'm an experienced business executive. I worked for Intel for 28 years, and I know what it takes to attract and retain businesses. I support sustainable investment in high-quality education to prepare our state and our children for their future.
Thank you. Joe Bizacci.
Thank you. So education is the key here. If you look at a few years ago, IKEA wanted to actually relocate, was very close to considering Arizona to relocate their corporate headquarters over in Tempe. And they took one look at our education system and they said, thanks, but no thanks. And we've seen that time and time again. Education is the key. If we want to attract businesses to come set up their corporate headquarters here, they want to make sure that their employees' kids have a good education system to be sent to. So we need to invest in K-12 education, but in addition to that, we also need to invest in higher education and community colleges as well. If you look at our state budget, the general fund appropriates $0.00 to our community college districts. Not just all of them. I mean, I'm talking in addition to Coconino County, Pima County, and Maricopa counties, our three largest. We're talking in general. They appropriate $0.00. That was cut out during the recession. And I think we should have a program similar to what the state of Nevada and Tennessee has, where if you maintain a 3.0 GPA in community college, that should be free. We should find a way to make that happen. There's no reason that we can't. Other states have gotten that done. I also think we need to invest more in CTE programs as well. I teach a STEM class, so this is near and dear to my heart personally. We need to make sure kids are ready to get out into the workforce and get a job and maybe not necessarily go to college. But there's a lot of different things that we need to look at. And I think CTE, I think K-12, and community college and higher education funding needs to be our top priority as a state. We also need to reduce the cost of our 3 universities.
Thank you. Elizabeth Brown.
We must invest in infrastructure and education, not only K-12, but also our community college and universities. Businesses and corporations seek out robust, healthy, and thriving communities when people have adequate money to spend. They seek communities with an educated workforce, good public schools, and a place that they have a future. I would listen to ideas that invest and uplift our communities.
Thank you. And Jimmy?
All right, so education, infrastructure, and low regulatory and tax environment are the 3 things corporations look at. Now, I'll tell you that I worked in 19 states in the last 8 years, and my wife went with me often. We had these hypothetical discussions about would we live here. The number one thing she always said was what? Tell me about the schools. And that is what drives people to places, good quality schools. And if we want corporations to come, and I talked about it in the other question, we have to meet the demands of those corporations. We have to have a qualified, ready workforce. I've listened to Dr. Crow talk a year ago about us moving in the wrong direction on that. And then he went into a whole spill of how to fix that. And I agreed 100% with him. But the biggest thing was getting corporations more involved with the school levels, shrinking the gap through STEM programs, through CTEs. Let's get the workforce ready and able to meet the demands of those corporations. If we do that, they'll be here.
Thank you. As we move on to question number 11 now, how do we become a state that follows the law but is still compassionate about immigration? And we will start with DJ Ruffin.
I feel there's no point in asking that question. This is a federal issue and the state can't do anything about it.
Thank you. Lake Saka.
My grandfather on one side and my great-grandfather on the other immigrated to this country. I'm here tonight because the American dream worked for them. The men and women of our public safety forces need the resources to combat drug trafficking, human smuggling, gang violence, and illegal immigration at our border. But they need and want to carry out their jobs in a humane manner. I believe we can all join together to pressure our federal lawmakers to take action to fix a broken immigration system.
Thank you. Joe Pizzacci.
Thank you. This is a very complex question, and I think that the policy that the federal government has taken up the last few weeks that we've all seen of separating children at the border from their parents is a genuinely evil policy. And as a state representative, I would do everything in my power to lobby the government to stop that. We do need comprehensive immigration reform. We need to enforce, we need to have border security. We need to deport criminals. There's no question about that. But I would ask people to really put themselves in some of these families' shoes. I mean, if you're from Nicaragua or El Salvador or Honduras, and your children were at risk of being sold into sex slavery or being forced to work for a criminal drug cartel, and your only other option were to come to the United States, I think you'd probably look at that too. We need to treat people with compassion and empathy, and we need to try to understand what's bringing them to the United States to begin with. And I think a lot of these people are asylum seekers. And we're turning them around and sending them back to imminent death and despair. And that's not what America is all about. That's not what they did to my great-grandparents. And I think the policy that we have taken up now is really wrong. I support DACA and I support the Dreamers as well. We need a pathway to citizenship for them.
Thank you. Elizabeth Brown.
It amazes me how our country has got to this state in affairs. My grandfather came over when he was 12 years old from Italy. Yeah, he had a family sponsor him. He got a job, and then they got married, and now I'm here because of my parents. And we have laws that could easily be implemented that are proven to work that secure the border while traveling. But we must implement these laws. What we are doing now is not humane, and it is a violation on human rights. We can talk to people in compassionate ways, and our federal government needs to find comprehensive immigration reform.
Thank you. Jimmy Lindblom.
All right. DJ was right. I like him, short and sweet, right? This is primarily a federal issue. Personally, and I like the question because it helps you to tap into a little bit of where we feel on this issue. But there is a need to have safe, secure borders to make sure that the drug cartels, the criminals are not passing through, the human trafficking, those types of issues. And I support efforts to have a secure border. I also support efforts to have good screening processes in place where those that do come, who want to contribute, who want to be able to come and live the American dream, have an opportunity to do that. I work at a company that has one of the most diverse workforces, and it is I credit the abilities of the company I work at because of that diversity, the ability to look at things differently. We are better as a whole. But we do have to have secure borders. We do have to come up with screening ways. But we can also do that in a way where people can come, they can work, they can have a pathway to citizenship, and that can be done in a way where we are safe. And so I support those efforts.
Thank you. And Lindsay Robinson.
Thank you. Immigration is an issue within the purview of the federal government. However, as a border state, I feel we should be leading on the issue of immigration. We can secure the border with fair immigration policies right here in Arizona. Policies that encourage immigrants to follow the law rather than to break the law. Treat those that are at the border with dignity, respect, deserving of a human being, so that it's easier to detain criminals. Arizona should differentiate between families and criminals. Arizona should make the apprehending of criminals and deporting them its main focus. We should help in the efforts to reunite children with their parents, return to a system that respects the right of all individuals' due process rights, create a triangle approach: criminals apprehended, detained, and taken to a criminals unit for fast processing, families to a different division, and asylees to a division where they can get access to a fair hearing as quickly as possible in order to determine further processing. What is happening at the border is not in our financial interest as a nation. It costs more money to separate families, not to mention such practices are inhumane and outright human rights violations.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now to our last question. Appropriately enough, it's question number 12. So in closing, why are you the best candidate to represent legislative district number 12? And we will start with Blake Saka.
Thank you all for being here tonight and for CEA and VIP for hosting us. I'm a professional problem solver, an experienced business executive, and an educator. I've demonstrated the ability to effectively solve complex problems, and I want to help our state legislator focus on the big problems that we all face. I believe passionately in the future of Arizona, and especially in the need to invest responsibly in high-quality education and high-paying jobs and excellent roads and highways. My name is Blake Saka, and I'm asking for your vote in the Republican primary on August 28th. And please remember, both Republicans and independents can vote in our Arizona primary. Thank you.
I'm not sure if that qualifies as campaigning or not, but you did ask me to explain why you were the best candidate. So now we go to Joe Bisaccia.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here tonight, and thanks to VIP and CEA for putting this forum together. I do really think that these are important events so the voters can make informed decisions. So I believe that I am the best candidate to represent this community because I work with kids and I work with technology, and that's the future of Arizona. And in my opinion, for far too long, we've had a whole heck of a lot of people over in the legislature who have invested in neither of those things. And I will be wholly committed to investing in our public education system and our higher education system, and making sure that we are making sure that Arizona is committed to investing in STEM, CTE, and the future of technology as well. Those are areas that I think that I have a unique perspective on from my experience in journalism and my experience in software as well. And now my time as an educator too. I believe that gives me a unique perspective and would allow me the ability to not only serve you well, but be very effective as a legislator as well. So August 28th, in the Democratic primary, I would love to earn your vote if you are a registered independent or Democrat. Thank you.
Elizabeth Brown.
I come from a family of educators, and I know the importance of a good public education. And I have broad interests for the state, education, to the environment, to the economy, to ethics, and to equality. Whereas our current representatives seem to be narrowly focused on privatizing schools and persons and personal business interests, I am for we the people. I have experience in education system, state government, and I have seen the issues and the effect that for all of Arizonians. I am in this because I love my community, I love the state of Arizona, and I want us to be in the top 5 in public education, not the bottom 5. I will be a voice for you. Thank you.
Jimmy Lindblom.
All right. Well, I'm doing it because I really enjoy campaigning in the summers. It's my favorite. And I guess you can speed and have governmental immunity for those of you that follow. Anyway, I went there, but and I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I'm sorry. I'll be good. All right. I much like each of you here have a real desire to improve the place in which we live. I grew up in Gilbert. It was a small place in a mobile home in the middle of the country because my dad wanted me to learn to work, and so he moved us out of the city. And we met a lot of great people, real good, humble people that work really hard. And I don't like watching people suffer. And I live in Gilbert, one of the best blessed places of our state, but I'm not blind to what's happening outside of Gilbert. And when I drive through the rest of our state, I think of those in need and the improvements and the differences that I can make serving the legislature. I have an accounting degree at ASU. I'm a good product of Gilbert Public Schools. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. And I have a law degree from Thomas Jefferson in San Diego. And I chose to run a construction company. My wife was real happy about that. But I love working hard. I love serving people. And I believe that the experiences that I've had over my life as a business owner working with people will help me to work down at the legislature with some pretty interesting characters and be able to find some common ground.
Thank you.
And make a difference.
Lindsay Robinson.
In a representative democracy, we must elect leaders who reflect our shared values and the population which they serve. As a former dreamer, teacher, and attorney who worked for a nonprofit firm, I'm committed to serving everyone in my community, and not just those with the means to influence policy. We need leaders who put people ahead of politics and who understand that education is the great equalizer. As a product of public education, I understand wholeheartedly the importance of properly funding our public schools. Education will be my first priority. We have a duty to end gun violence in our nation. I believe it begins with proactive steps such as drastically increasing the counselor-to-student ratio in our schools. And too often, I find that well-intentioned laws have unintended consequences. As an attorney, I understand the practical component of policies and how it impacts the community, and I will fight to make sure that laws take all members of the community into consideration and are written with the precision needed to have the desired outcome. And I am humbly looking to earn your vote. Thank you.
DJ Rogers.
District 12 is changing. We no longer rely on agriculture to sustain our economy. I'm uniquely qualified for State House because of my diverse business background and time in the trades, and will promote restoring public education at every step along the way. And I ask for your vote in the primary on August the 28th, Democrat or Independent. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this now concludes our question and answer session. And first, I'd like to thank Susan for her awesome and accurate timekeeping there. And secondly, I'd like to thank our candidates for your participation tonight, taking the time to be with us. Now we can clap and give them a round of applause. And now, Josh, it's back to you.
Thank you, Deacon Robin. You did great. Appreciate your keeping everyone settled. Candidates, you made it hard for us. You each did so well tonight. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the courage it took. Every candidate in LD12 was asked to come here, and these 6 had the courage to come and see you. Felt you were important enough for them. So I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. This event will be available for viewing later on the website chandlerea.org. That's our CEA website, chandlerea.org. You'll be able to watch this again, or if you know someone who wanted to be here and was unable, you can send them that direction. Also, within your packets, there should have been an interest card. If you want to know more about future CEA or VIP candidate forums or be involved in these, please complete that card and you can leave it on the table on the way out. Thank you, each of you, for coming. Thank you for bearing the heat. I got a little stuffy in here and I appreciate you for bearing through that. We hope you'll enjoy our future candidate forums. The next one is for the Arizona Corporation Commission candidates and will be held in August. Here's a couple calendar issues. Unite, UNITE, is sponsoring a candidate event on August 6th for districts 12, 16, 17, and 25. On August 23rd, the Dayspring United Methodist Church will be showing the documentary Backpack Full of Cash. That'll be from 7 to 9 at the Dayspring United Methodist Church on August 23rd. For my CEA and VIP volunteers, if you'll please help us kind of put the room back in order. And we're also going to ask those who played a role in this organization of the event to kind of meet us in the front so we can do a quick evaluation. And to each of you, have a good night and a safe drive home. Thank you.